Mrs. Green had a beautiful lace tablecloth. It was hand-woven more than 100 years ago for the wedding of Mrs. Green's great-great-grandfather as a gift to the newlyweds, and has since been considered a family heirloom. The woman treasured the tablecloth very much and carefully stored it in a chest, shifting it with mothballs, lavender, and mint. According to their tradition, the tablecloth was taken out of the pantry only on the wedding day of one of the family members. They covered the festive table with it and believed that it would bring happiness to the young. Mrs. Green's daughter, Deborah, admired the delicate weaving so much that she herself became interested in making lace and enrolled in needlework courses. Time went by. One day, Deborah met a pleasant young man and a year later decided to unite with him by marriage. The ceremonial date was appointed, invitations were sent out to guests, and final preparations were done. 2 days before the wedding, Mrs. Green carefully removed the tablecloth from the canvas bag in which it was kept. And she was horrified to find that in one place the lace had spread, probably due to the fact that it had been stored for a long time, and an ugly hole appeared on the wonderful thing. Mrs. Green immediately began calling the restoration workshops, but every time the craftsmen heard what delicate work was required, they refused to take on it, fearing damaging such an expensive thing. The second day was coming to an end, but it was not possible to find a restorer for the tablecloth. Mrs. Green was very worried that the family tradition would not be observed at her daughter's wedding and was in a depressed mood. In the evening, after a whole day of preparation for the holiday, she returned home and suddenly saw the precious tablecloth. It lay on the table and seemed completely whole, snow white and radiant with beauty. The delicate openwork patterns looked completely intact and as delightful as on the day of Mrs. Green's own wedding. Not believing her eyes, the woman carefully examined the relic and only with great difficulty found the darned place. The repair was done so subtly that it remained almost indistinguishable from the main cloth. The woman saw Deborah coming into the room and asked her what happened. The daughter explained that her friend Louise, with whom they went to needlework courses together, ran to visit. Deborah was just finishing discussing the decor for the wedding ark with the organizer and asked the girl to wait for her in the dining room for a while. There, Louise saw a tablecloth with holes spread out on the table and, out of boredom, decided to mend it with a needlework kit that she had in her purse. Louise had no idea of the value of the tablecloth, but she knew how to sew perfectly, and by the time Deborah went down to the dining room, there was no trace of the hole. The tablecloth looked as good as new, and there was no doubt that the wedding tradition of the Greens would be observed. Sometimes the fear of a difficult task makes us lose confidence in our own abilities and retreat, when in fact we could easily cope with it. Don't let doubt stop you from winning.